what do you say, in all of your travels and meeting with people? I'm sure you've encountered a few of them who say they don't get poetry. What do you say? What do you offer to someone who has that feeling?
I try to get them to think about poetry on their terms. Because I think what happens when you mention the word poetry, people think of very stylized, very formal, sometimes inaccessible
Mm-hmm.
language. Oh, I remember my godfather, who was an artist, my first book. I was like holding my breath because I wanted him to tell me what he thought. And finally I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "I have no idea what you're talking about." He said, "But it sounds good. It
Mm.
feels good." And I thought, well, that's all that mattered. It felt good. So for me, I think people have to see themselves and be able to find themselves inside the lines.
Mm.
If I'm standing doing a poetry reading, and if I've written a poem, and if only the black women in the room get it, I feel that I failed.
Mm-hmm.
If I write a poem and only Southern people in the room get it, I think I failed.
Mm-hmm.
If I write a poem and if only short girls with curly hair get it, I still failed. So what is the hook? What's the humanness of the poem? Where's the human code that it doesn't matter that this person is Russian and our cultures are totally apart, but they get it. Or when I read in Morocco, in a room with a room full of elderly Amazigh men who don't speak English, but they're talking to the professor sitting next to them, and they're like, "What is she saying?" They're crying. They're like, "Why am I crying? What is she saying? What is she saying? Someone tell us. Translate, translate, translate." Because they say, we felt you. We have no idea what you were saying, but we were weeping. Well, that's the biggest
Wow, that's a gift.
contribution. I mean, it's sort of like me as a vegetarian. One time I was at a hog killing, and I told the guys that this barbecue is driving me nuts. It smells so freaking good, and I'm a vegetarian. Well, he said, "That's the highest compliment, lady, I could have gotten today." But it's that language that is no language, that language that is all about the senses. So and I make people see poetry differently. Like, do you hear poetry in the rain? Do you hear a storm? Can you hear the poem in it? When you're baking, can you hear the poem in it? When you're making a cake, can you hear the poem in it? You know? And so we have to help people think about how they want to define poetry.